If you stripped away all the titles, the accolades, the external validations, who would you be? 10 years ago, I walked away from the life I knew. I left behind a successful career, a comfortable home, and a familiar world. But I wasn't finished.
Good morning. I can't believe it, but today is actually the day when we're leaving the country. We are going on this epic 6,000-mile journey, which leads us eventually all the way to Bali in Indonesia.
I sold nearly everything I owned, went onto a road trip and then moved halfway across the world to Bali, an island only seen in magazines and, YouTube videos. But the lessons I found were not the ones I expected. Going through it all has been the most transformative experience of my life, something I would not want to miss for anything. Maybe you're at a crossroad yourself, or perhaps just curious about what happens when somebody decides to quit their life. Either way, I hope my story can offer some insight or at least make you think about your own path a little differently. So after I landed in Bali and that initial excitement was gone, I found myself in a strange reality. Imagine you're waking up and there are no meetings to rush to, there are no emails to answer, and your reminder list is empty. At first, that felt incredible. Who wouldn't enjoy that kind of freedom, right? Back in my old days, I knew exactly who I was, a finance executive. My days filled with numbers, spreadsheets and strategies. People respected me for my accomplishments, the things I've done, my titles and my expertise. But here, none of that mattered. Nobody cared about my past accomplishments. I was just another person trying to find his place. And this is when I realized that leaving everything behind isn't the scary part. What is scary is to fully embrace the new me. There isn't a safe place to fall back onto. A boss who would encourage you, a paycheck from somebody else, or demands for your time. Now it's all on me. It's on me to fill that calendar, to write that email, and to encourage myself to make that next deadline. So I did what every sensible human might do. I used what I know and continued to make videos about careers, about change, about the occasional financial topic. I even remember a conversation I had with a business coach back then when I was still in England. When I told her about my desire for complete change, she gave me some food for thought. Not everything has to be a revolution. Most things can be an evolution. And that worked for a while. But the truth is that while I delivered decent value on my channel, I slowly grew less excited about those topics. I wasn't that finance executive anymore. I'm excited about how we can live our lives on our own terms and what it takes to make that change, as well as how we can overcome some of the fears. So there I was, living in what many would call paradise. I'd swapped the grey skies of London for the vibrant colours of Bali. You'd think everything would be different, right? But here's the funny thing. I found myself falling into the same routine I had back home. I'd spend hours scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, and generally keeping to myself. Sounds familiar? I realized that despite changing my environment completely, I hadn't changed myself. It's like packing the same old habits in your suitcase and unpacking them in a new place. I thought a new setting would automatically lead to a new me, but that wasn't the case. One day a friend messaged me saying, "You must have the time of your life out there." I looked up from my screen and thought, am I? I was in this incredible place, but living the same life as before. That's when it hit me. Some things won't change until you do. Today I'm in Munduk in this wonderful restaurant It's rainy outside, but that makes it really cozy to have a cup of coffee and just had a tom yum soup. But it reminded me of something. Have you ever had a relationship or a job or maybe a new city and thought, if I just get there, if I just meet that person, if I just get this new job, then my whole life will change. And then you realize when you get there, you fall back into the same old routines. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it reminded me that things around us can change, but we don't change until we make that conscious effort. And so, yes, you can, like myself, move halfway across the globe, or you can start right now, wherever you are. And it's easy to assume that if you plan for your personal change properly, you would succeed, right? And there is where I learned another lesson, one that I didn't expect. You know, I've always been a planner. Back in my finance days, everything was about forecasts, projections, and meticulously laid out strategies. So when Lisa and I started talking about moving to Bali, our conversation was filled with plans.
I need to learn to fly the drone. I need to learn how to use GoPro cameras. I need to do this and do this. And all of this are all new to me. I don't even know how I'm supposed to cram all of this into my little brains.
And somewhere along the way, we had this idea to drive all the way to Asia with our 4x4 Land Rover, a plan that took weeks to map out. And it took only days to crumble when we knew driving through Russia is no longer an option. And as much as we wanted to stick to our plan, we eventually settled for a road trip through Europe before making our way to Bali. We thought that by planning every detail, we'd make the transition smoother and avoid surprises. And when we finally made the move, we quickly realized that the Bali we experienced living day to day was different from the Bali we saw on YouTube or what you may experience as a visitor. Here's the lesson. Making plans can give us a sense of security, a feeling that we are in control. But in reality, this is just that, a feeling. Life doesn't adhere to our scripts, and that's okay. I learned that flexibility is more valuable than rigid planning. Trust the journey. Have faith in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. Of course, embracing uncertainty doesn't mean to ignore practicalities of life, such as finances. Let me tell you, whether you have money or not, you face struggles either way. When I left my career in finance and moved to Bali, I heard a lot of comments like, "It's easy for you because you have money." And on the flip side, if I had left with nothing, I'm sure people would have said, "It's easy for you because you've got nothing to lose." Isn't it interesting how, no matter our circumstances, there's always an excuse as to why it's easier for somebody else? Yes, Lisa and I had some savings that we could fall back onto, and that made a lot of things a lot easier, absolutely. But it didn't make the decision any less daunting. We still had to leave our friends and family and our comfort zone and everything that we knew for something that to us was completely unknown. We knew that we had to cut expenses and adjust our lifestyle because just replicating what we were doing before wasn't an option. The key point is this: whether you have little or a lot, money often isn't the ultimate barrier to change. It is what lives in our mind. Do we want something bad enough to go through some level of pain? Because let's be honest, any change has some pain and sometimes a lot of pain associated to it. When we researched our new way of living, we looked at the cost of living, where in Bali it's a lot less than in England. We knew that we could live comfortably even though we had to leave some of the things behind that we valued before. And the reality is this: every situation has its pros and cons. If you have a lot of money, then yes, it makes maybe a change a lot easier, but it can also make you complacent. And
If you don't have anything, well, great news is that you don't have anything to lose, but it will add a lot of pressure to your change. The thing is that many take those aspects as an excuse or a justification that something can't be done. But I want you to reflect honestly. If money wasn't the issue here, are there any other fears that live in you that you have to address? And if there are there any small steps that you can already take today to edge a little bit closer to that life and to your aspirations that you truly want? I've always believed that if you want to live an extraordinary life, you have to be willing to do extraordinary things. Sounds inspiring, right? But here's something people often don't talk about. When you choose a path less traveled, it can get pretty lonely. Not everyone understands why you'd leave the comfort of the familiar to venture into the unknown. And sometimes that means walking alone. But knowing all that doesn't mean that you have to be isolated. Lisa and I started to meet with locals and expats, and we also started to play tennis again, met groups in Bali who, apart from the location, had little in common with us. And that's okay, because you can follow your unique paths while also sharing the ordinary.
Literally queuing up this long for ice cream.
Remember, it's okay to seek out and cherish the ordinary, even if you pursue the extraordinary. 10 years ago, I walked away from a life that no longer resonated with me. I thought by changing my environment, I would change my life. But it turns out that walking away from everything and leaving everything behind wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was letting go of who I used to be. I realized that some things won't change until I do. I discovered that planning doesn't guarantee success. It just makes me feel a little bit safer. I confronted the notion about money and realized that it isn't a barrier to change unless I allow it to be. And probably most profoundly, I realized that living and walking an extraordinary life at times can be lonely, but you can still find connection in the ordinary. Maybe you're standing at your own crossroads right now, feeling the pull for a change. Maybe you're holding on to a past identity that's no longer serving you. Or you've made plans that feel safe but unfulfilling. Or maybe you are worried that you don't have enough, whether it's money or support or courage to truly live the life that you want. I'm here to tell you that the journey is worth it. An extraordinary life begins the moment you let go of who you were, embrace the unknown of who you can become, and discover that true connection and fulfillment are found not in grand gestures, but in the courage to change and the simple moments along the way.